Why do we perform this Rath Yatra? What is the raison d'etre? How do you say it? Raison d'etre?
You're mixing up coup d'etat.
No, that's what they say. What is its purpose for being? Why are we observing this Rath Yatra? What is our mentality towards it? And what is our mood towards Rath Yatra? And then what is Jagannath's mood about Rath Yatra? What is Krishna's mood about Rath Yatra? What is Radharani's mood? What is Mahaprabhu's mood? So we're trying to enter into the mood of Jagannath, of Krishna, of Radharani, specifically through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Say Gaura, say Krishna, say Jagannath. That Mahaprabhu is none other than Krishna, and Krishna is none other than Jagannath. So they appear in different forms to bring us closer to that deep internal mood. What is the mood of Jagannath? Why does Jagannath appear in this form with no hands, with no feet, melted features? Why does he appear in that way? What is the story of his origin? Maybe we'll get into that tomorrow, but I want to read a little bit today from Sri Guru Darshan, page 1106. Radharani's Rath Yatra. Whose Rath Yatra are we observing? Whose possessive case is it? Bhakti and Prem is all about mamata, possessiveness. Radharani's Rath Yatra is the title of this chapter. It means Rath Yatra is owned, or the possessive case towards Srimati Radhika. It's her Rath Yatra. So that itself is showing a very kind of, almost you could say, counterintuitive position. Jagannath Rath Yatra. Why would we say Radharani's Rath Yatra? To understand that purport, we have to think of Rath Yatra from the point of view not of just ourselves or of society in general, but try to understand the mood of Rath Yatra from Mahaprabhu's point of view. What is Mahaprabhu's point of view about Rath Yatra? Mahaprabhu is specifically the avatar, the incarnation, who came to understand the moods of Radharani and also of Krishna. Those things he couldn't understand from his own subjective perspective. As Krishna himself, as God himself, things that he couldn't comprehend or experience through his own practical, conscious experience, he came as Mahaprabhu to experience. And so Mahaprabhu was the one who really popularized Rath Yatra as we see it. It's described by Vaishnavas. Before Mahaprabhu was performing Rath Yatra in Puri, it would go on, but mostly the military and the police would escort Jagannath, or the kings or paid servants. They would have paid servants cleaning the roads, hired, and things like that. But when Mahaprabhu came, Mahaprabhu established the real mood of Rath Yatra. Mahaprabhu established that Gundicha temple should be cleaned by devotees. You know, we see nowadays also in many temples, we see that most, you could say, like menial services are performed by hired labor. And things like classes and kirtan is by devotees. And sometimes those devotees are also paid. Pujaris are also paid. But Mahaprabhu's mood was not so much like that, because he established the point that these activities are the real cream of bhakti. How could we give those up? That's not the mood of awakening the Braj Bhav we want. Oh, just get people to clean, people to sweep in front of Jagannath, people to pull Jagannath. That's how it was. Before Mahaprabhu, oh, you have people who pull Jagannath, build the cart and take him to the Gundicha, and then bring him back and clean the Gundicha temple before that. When Mahaprabhu came, he said, no, we'll clean the Gundicha. The Kashi Mishra, the king's priest, was saying, oh, Mahaprabhu, you're such an important sannyasi. We can't. He said, bring me a broom. Mahaprabhu said, bring me a broom. I want to sweep the temple. No. There's so many workers to do that. Why will you do that? He said, no. Bhakti is bhajadatu iti sevayam. Bhakti is seva. But seva is something that is relished by the devotee because it's pleasing to their beloved. Because it pleases their beloved, they perform this very joyfully. And it's not only because it's pleasing to Krishna, but because it's like, if you have deep love for somebody, you like to do things for them. So if you take those things away, it's like if you really love your child, you may have a maid who cooks most of the time, but once in a while you're going to want to cook for them and feed them directly. That's bhakti. Or if you have someone you love, your wife or your husband, if you don't have a chance to do any service for them, then love is kind of inhibited by the lack of reciprocation through service. And so when we serve, we're serving to directly have an interaction and exchange of love with our beloved. In this instance with Krishna as Jagannath, that we want to prepare the place for him. Mahaprabhu himself, he was cleaning the Gundicha and then he used his own cloth to dry it. And he cleaned it so thoroughly, once, twice, first removing the stones and rubble, then sweeping everything, then washing everything. And hundreds and hundreds of bhaktas together would do it. And people were thinking, why are the bhaktas all doing all the work? Because that activity is essential to bhakti. Bhakti is Padasevanam also. Means engaging the senses in Krishna's service. Because that activity is what gives you that bliss of relationship with Krishna. And it's what builds that possessiveness, mamata. Mamata prematadika. As much as we develop possessiveness, this is my responsibility, this is mine, then we get eligibility for divine love, prem. That's the mood of the acharyas, that's the teaching of our acharyas in this line. Mamata prematadika. So Mahaprabhu had the mood, no, we'll do it. Because otherwise, any ordinary people do it, they may not do it with so much possessiveness, they may not do it with so much love and attention. We'll do it, and we'll do it very nicely for Jagannath. And it's the mood of preparing the kunj for him. So that's one aspect. But really, what do we think of as Rath Yatra? Is it just pulling some wooden form that we call God? That's what a lot of people may think. From the secular point of view, it's a unique religious phenomenon, you could say, that happens, like Kumbh Mela. 1 million people come together and pull this more idol that they call God. That's one point of view. Other point of view is there's confusion. Who is this? They think he is Dharu Brahma. They have some kind of impersonal point of view towards him. But what is Jagannath's point of view? That's what we want to get to. When we understand Jagannath's point of view, then we understand Mahaprabhu's and Radharani's. And that is what is Radharani's Rath Yatra. That is what Mahaprabhu taught us. That Seto Paranana Painu Jaha Lagi Dahane Dure Genu. That now I have found the Lord of my heart, for whom I was burning in the fire of separation. That is the mood of Rath Yatra. And so when we go there to Rath Yatra, if you've been in Puri, you have to fight to get to the ropes. You imagine before Mahaprabhu, they just have hired people pulling Jagannath. Nowadays, you fight to get to the rope. There's different conceptions around that. People think, if you get to pull Jagannath, then you basically get freedom from samsara and liberation, things like that. You take one thread with you. But what is the mood of those followers of Mahaprabhu? I'm pulling the rope. I'm directly pulling Krishna to Braj, bringing him back. And so when you develop mamata means minus. Krishna is mine. That's a very elevated conception. That's the mood of the Brijabasis. Most people think, at least like, oh God, you are there. We don't really know our relationship. And then more elevated, God, you are there. I am yours. I'm offering myself to you. That's better. But much higher is, you are mine. And therefore, you are my responsibility. I'm going to take care of you. That's the mood of Rath Yatra. I'm bringing you back by force now to Vrindavan. And so when you get into that deepness of mamata, you develop partiality, which is another interesting thing about spiritual life. Generally, in spiritualism, we think universalism means we are one with everything, we are connected with everything, we are in harmony with everything, and then we're kind of like, we lose personal identity to a point. And especially we're trying to wear away our ties to any specific kind of tribe or any specific kind of group, right? You think like people who are very tribal, they're not very spiritual. More universally become, we're all one, kumbaya. Oh, we're very spiritual. That is a level of spiritual understanding. We are one, we are connected with everything. That's a very high level of spiritual understanding, but it's not the highest. When you can go a step beyond that, and that's developing the ultimate mood of partiality, pakshavad. We are partial to who? That's the mood of Rath Yatra. We are fighting for Krishna. to bring him back to our group, to bring him to Brajadam. That Krishna, if you look into the details of Rath Yatra, there's two sides. There's the Dwarkabasis, the Brajabasis. They're both Krishna's eternal associates. They're God's eternal beloved devotees. And yet, we're trying to develop the mood that no, we're going to bring Krishna to our side. We're trying to develop partiality. Even in the spiritual world, in Braj, within Braj, we want to be partial. To who? Radha Paksha Chadi Je Jane Se Jan Je Bave Se Bave Thake Amito Radhika Paksha Pati Sada Kabu Nahi Heri Thaki. In this verse, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this word Pakshavad twice. It's very confusing to people because Bhaktivinoda Thakur said party spirit is the great enemy of spiritual progress. So that's on the material realm. But we also hear that what is the highest in the spiritual world is a very low thing here. And so Parakiya Bhav, for example, amorous affairs with others, like a paramour relationship, is described to be lower. But in the spiritual world, it's the highest thing. So partiality, party spirit in this world can be considered to be a bad thing. But in the spiritual world, it's a very wonderful thing if you can develop it in the right way. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who said party spirit is the enemy, he says, Radha Paksha Chadi, Jai Jan Se Jan, Jai Bhave Se Bhave Thake. He says, whoever they may be, however great they may be, if they're not in my group of Radharani, I don't know them. I will not even look at their face. Amito Radhika Paksha Pati Sada Kabu Nahi Heri Thake. I will never even look in their face because they are not in my Radharani's group. It's a very high elevated mood. It's not something we can imitate. Gurudev tells this story. It's in a different passage of Guru Darshan that one time they brought prasad from Dwarkadish, Mathura. If you know the story, Krishna basically, he grew up in Braj, and then at 10 years old, 9.5 years old, Narad Muni came and said, you have to come, and Kamsa's there, and the earth, Mother Earth was praying for you to relieve the burden of the earth, you have to come and do your duties. So Krishna left Braj and performed his duties. That's what he told Arjuna to do in the Gita. Fight, do your duties, take up your responsibility. Krishna practiced what he preached in the Bhagavad Gita. He left Braj and did his duty. But in doing that, he didn't feel that same sweetness of relationship. That's why Mahaprabhu himself says, and Krishna himself said, even though Krishna followed his duties, what he told Arjuna to do, he left Braj and took up his responsibility. Yada hida hidarmasya glanir bhavati bharata dhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam shridamiham paritranaya sadhanam vishaya truskritham dharma samstapnardaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Krishna said, I have to come and destroy the demons, protect the sadhus, reestablish religion, destroy religion. I have to do that. But in Braj, he was just performing his sweet pastimes. Ras Leela, Kalya Leela, Chir Haran Leela, Gocharan, Makan Shor Leela. So many pastimes. Where was he doing? Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya chaduskritam. He was destroying some demons, but really he was experiencing his sweet pastimes. So he left, he performed his duties. And then he went to Dwarka, he went to Hastinapur, did so many things. But even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityaja. Ultimately, you have to give it up. Because if you don't learn to give it up, you can become attached to the results of that, attached to the idea of it. You don't do it just as a service and a sacrifice or a yajna for God. Even here in this world, serving a mission, building temples, we're doing that. That's our dharma. We're doing that for Guru and Krishna. But if we become too attached to it, then it binds us to samsara. And we will not be able to escape and go to Krishna. Oh, I want to stay here, look over everything. Oh. There's one acharya, Gurudev said, now we should forget these things. So when Dwarkadish Prasad came to Gurudev rejected it. He was honoring the devotees so much, but he wouldn't take the prasad. He said, I will not take Rukmini's remnants. Rukmini is Krishna's eternal consort. How can you reject her remnants? It's like an offense to reject Krishna prasad, but Gurudev said, I will not take it. Prabodhananda Sarasvatipad says, I would rather be a dog in Braj, eating the remnants thrown out from the Madan Mohan temple, than go and be an associate of Rukmini and Dwarka. I would rather be a dog in Braj. It's a very strange conception, but this is the mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Amito Radhika Paksha Pati Sada. What does Bhaktivinoda Thakur also sing? Radhika Dasi Jadi Hoy Abhiman Shigra Milai Tava Gokulakan. When we develop the ego, the pride, the ahankar, again, I think something considered lower in this world. Abhiman is used as a bad word. Oh, he's very Abhiman. He's very dambik, very proud. Big false ego. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Radhika dasi jadi hoy Abhiman. When we get the Abhiman, that strong self-conception, that attitude, like that attitude that I am Radhika's follower, then very quickly we achieve Krishna's lotus feet. Very quickly he comes to us. It's a very strange thing. So that's why our Vaishnavas say this is Radharani's Rath Yatra. And in the highest level of spirituality, we develop that mamata. So that's why Gurudev says laser focus. First level of spirituality, we're connected with everything. Everything is one. The more we advance, the more we go into a specific mood and a specific relationship and a specific connection. And at that point, we still understand we're connected to Krishna and everything. But our nourishment is coming from that specific relationship. Because that's the secret. Like the impersonalist, you get some kind of peace of mind by feeling like you're one with everything. But you don't get the nourishment of a loving relationship that's specific. Most normal human beings or even animals, they want relationship. They don't just want to like feel this sense of like ambiguous oneness with everything. Most people don't want that. Even though you may feel that, you see great philosophers, Alan Watts and whatnot, impersonalists, very intelligent, talking about how we don't exist and how we're all one with everything, and even that doesn't exist. But what do? In their own life, they practice seeking out relationships. They practice having loving relationships, whether with partners, with wives, with children. They all do it. It's very rare to find an impersonalist who practices what he preaches. It's very rare because they're all seeking real relationship. And that's what we're seeking after. But to achieve that highest relationship, we have to follow this process of Rath Yatra, becoming one-pointed. Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam yejana paripashate tesham nityavyuktanam yogakshema vahamyam. If you're one-pointed, ananya chintayanto, one-pointedness, again and again in the Gita, Krishna talks about this, then I accept you as my own. Ashraya loye bhaje tare Krishna nahi tyaje arshav more akaran. Those who take shelter, I bring them to me. All others perish, live and die like regular animals, ordinary people in this world. Why? They're just living and dying in the cycle of birth and death perpetually. Finding out temporary relationships in this world, losing them. But in the spiritual world, we want to seek out spiritual relationship. That means finding a genuine, bona fide guru who can carry us forward on this path, who has genuine connection with Krishna or with the Brijabasis, and following under their footsteps, accepting their shelter, taking up service under their guidance, then we can quickly progress and develop this mood. So this is what we are trying to learn. This is the mood of Jagannath. Jagannath is seeking, how can I go back to Braj? He left Braj at 9.5 years old. For 100 years he was outside Braj doing his duty. But the Brijabasis, they knew he was not fully satisfied there. Why? Because even though we do our duty for everyone in this world, the nature of material people in this world is that they are selfish. And they only are seeking their own betterment. This is described in all the Upanishads, that really so-called family relationships are not ultimately based on selfless love, they're based on selfish love. I love you because for somehow you gratify my desires. Even though if you may be a great hero who's going and saving people, apparently very altruistically, but still there's some kind of sentiment that this is satisfying or fulfilling your own need, right? And so that's the nature of this world. So even though Krishna goes and he's helping everyone is trying to engage him in their own service out of the point of view that Krishna, God, is meant to please and satisfy me. Oh God, give me bread and butter. Oh God, fulfill my needs. And so the Vaishnavas gives an example. One of the ideas around why Jagannath is standing without arms and feet. Oh, everyone's taking everything away from him. He says, take. Dhananjahi, Jashodehi. Take whatever you want from me. And then he's just sitting there, saying, maybe now I don't have anything, then they won't disturb me anymore. I am Jagannath, I am the Lord of the universe, and everyone's just taking everything from me. Give me this, give me this, give me this. Only the Brijabasis, they don't want to take anything from Krishna, they only want to serve him with love. That's why Krishna says, I want to go to Braj, there all the love of the Brijabasis will nourish me, and again I will become Brajendra Nandan Sham Sundar, Murali Manohara. Why is Jagannath, how can I hold the flute? It's very difficult. But I want to come to Braj so I can play the flute. Because outside Braj, everyone is stealing everything away from me. Only give me this, give me that. God give me this, but no one says, God give me a relationship with love for you. There's a story of Gurudev in the Mutt. And he said, today I'll give you whatever you want. Ask me, I'll fulfill any desire. And one after another, people came and asked him for material things, or even so-called spiritual things. Make me very intelligent, free me from lust, make me qualified in this, qualified in that. At the end of the day, Gurudev said, alas, none of you asked for pure love and relationship with Krishna. You all asked for these extraneous things. And so he said, you try to develop this one-pointed desire that without Krishna, I cannot carry on my life. This is the mood of Srimati Radhika. During Ratha Yatra, Srimati Radharani is observing, who is joining my festival? Who desires Braja Bhakti? Who is following me? Mahaprabhu said, Seto Parananath Painu Jahalagi Madana Dahane Juri Genu. Now I have gained the Lord of my life, in the absence of whom I was being burned by Cupid and was withering away. So Ratha Yatra is not just Jagannath's chariot festival, it is Srimati Radharani's chariot festival. In this celebration, Radharani comes to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. She came as Mahaprabhu. And actually the example of the Ratha Yatra cart is that it's a symbol of the chariot they bring in their heart, and they pull Krishna in the chariot of their heart to Vrindavan Dham. So when Mahaprabhu attended Ratha Yatra, what was his mood? Ya komara harasa eva hi varasta eva chaitra chapas te chon milita malati surabhaya proda kadamba nilaha sa chaivasmi tatapi tatra surata vyapara lila vido reva rodasi vatasi tarutale cheta samutkantate. This is Padyavali 386, written, presented there by Rupa Goswami. When Mahaprabhu was pulling the chariot, even though he was in this form of like a sannyasi, people were very astonished. Why is he singing this mundane love song? When Mahaprabhu was pulling the cart, it's very interesting because he is Krishna and Jagannath is also Krishna. Jagannath is God and Mahaprabhu is also God. But God has that power to appear in both forms simultaneously with different purposes. And so he is in the mood of Radharani, trying to taste that moods of her love and separation and that sweetness of Krishna. And so she is pulling Jagannath with the mood, and Mahaprabhu, while purling, he began to sing a love song. And people were very bewildered. Why is this sannyasi, who was a renunciant, singing a mundane love song? He's singing that, that same person who stole my heart during my youth is now again my master before me. These are the same moonlit nights of the month of Chaitra. The same fragrance of malati flowers is there, and the same sweet breezes are blowing from the Kadamba forest. In our intimate relationship, I am the same lover, yet still my mind is not happy here. I am eager to go back to that place in the bank of the river under the Vitasi tree. That is my desire. So Mahaprabhu again began to sing this again and again, and people were thinking, what is he singing? It's very strange. They were thinking maybe he's remembering his life before being a sannyasi. And a lot of people started to criticize. Only a few people understood his mood. Rupa Goswami not only understood his mood, but wrote it down, the true import of his mood. And this is a very famous verse related to Ratha Yatra. Priya soyam Krishna sahachari kuru kshetra militas tataham saradha tad idam ubayo sangama sukam tatapyanta kailam madhura murali panchama juse manome kalindi pulina vipinaya sprihayati. Srimati Radharani spoke to a Saki, "Oh my dear friend." This is actually the mood of Geet Govinda. Radharani speaking to a Saki and then describing her feelings. "Oh my dear friend, now I have met my very dear old friend Krishna on this field of Kurukshetra." So the Ratha Yatra festival corresponds to a pastime, a Kurukshetra, on the battlefield. Actually, this was before the war, during a solar eclipse. And all the Brajbasis came to this place of Kurukshetra where the battle of Kurukshetra was fought. So Radharani, they came there and she saw Krishna for the first time in like 100 years. And in that time, she began to speak this verse, saying that I am the same Radharani, and now we are meeting together. It is, I am the same Radha, you are the same Krishna. But Hatti Goda Rajaves, now Krishna has a crown, military attire, surrounded by elephants, horses, chariots, weapons, military phalanxes. And Radharani is saying, we are meeting here together, it is very pleasant, but still I would like to go to the bank of the Jamuna beneath the trees of the forest there. I wish to hear the vibration of his sweet flute playing the fifth note within that forest of Vrindavan. So we must try to understand these moods. The Gaudiyas follow Srimati Radharani's footsteps and they call out to her, O Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini, I cannot tolerate the separation you are feeling. We'll end with this verse. Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Shri Krishna Virahe Radhikara Dasa Amito Sahite Nare, Jugala Milan Sukarakaran Jivana Charite Pari. I am absolutely unable to tolerate Sri Radhika's pitiable condition when she is suffering in separation from Sri Krishna. But I am fully prepared to immediately give up my life for the sake of their happy reunion. This is that mood of like one-pointedness we're talking about. They have so much mood of love and possessiveness, mineness. This is mine. God is mine. That to see them suffering, I would throw myself. I would give up my own life if I could please them. Because I don't see a difference between their desire and my desire. That's real Guru Seva also. We're really serving our Guru when we see no difference between his desire and our desire. That's called tadatmata, one-pointedness or oneness at heart. And that's also the mood that Mahaprabhu said in Shikshastakam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. I don't know my own happiness. I only know your happiness. Your happiness is my happiness. If in pleasing you I suffer, that suffering is my greatest happiness. न जाने अपने दुख सभी पंच तार सुख अमर तत्पर्य मोरे जदि दिले दुख तार मोर महासुख से दुख मोर सुख varya. So this is a very exalted mood. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada spread this chariot festival all over the world. It is Srimati Radhika's festival. Whoever participates in it can attain Braja Prem and residence in Braja Bhumi. In essence, we're showing our worthiness of being in her group by assisting her in her cause of bringing Krishna to Braj. We're bringing Krishna back to Braj. And we're ready to do whatever it takes to do that, by hook or crook. That's why you see, it's like a wrestling match pulling Jagannath. And sometimes the chariot stops. Sometimes it stops for hours. And then everyone's pulling and pulling. So it's like a tug of war. Is Krishna going to come to Braj or are they going to be able to keep him in Dwarka? And ultimately, if we're going and participating in Rath Yatra, pulling Jagannath to Braj through our kirtan. Also, that's why we're doing kirtan. We're trying to pull him, to sway the tide of the battle with our joyous, tumultuous kirtan. We're trying to pull him to Braj, to cast, like it's said in the Bhagavad Gita. It's also a battle. Pulling Jagannath to Braj is a battle. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, it said, everyone is blowing their conch shells. First, Bhishma, Dronacharya, Duryodhana blowing her powerful conch shells. Everyone's like, wow. But then Arjuna and Krishna blow their conch shells. And everyone immediately in their heart, they feel like, oh, we're finished. We're doomed. Because it's so powerful. So we want our kirtan to be so powerful that the Dwarkavasis know, oh, we don't have a chance. They're definitely going to take him back this year to Braj Dham. And sometimes they hold him for a day. And there's more fighting, more tug of war. But ultimately, Krishna comes to Braj. And that's why the pastime happens in Gundicha, where Lakshmi and all her followers, who's Rukmini, they come and they attack the Brajabasis after 5 days. Because Krishna, Jagannath did a ploy. He said, oh, I'm just going for some kind of recreation, and it's a ruse. His ruse was that, oh, I'm just going to Masi's house, my aunt's house. And that's the Gundicha temple. It's like, how many kilometers? I think it's like 5 kilometers or something. So they pull in something like that. Oh, I'm just going there for a while. But after 5 days, Lakshmi gets suspicious. And so she goes at night with torches and with royal attire. And all her attendants, all the big Brahmins and priests come. And they storm the gates and break past the guards and start to beat up all the Daitapatis, who are the other group of worshippers of Jagannath. Even in Jagannath Puri, there's 2 groups of devotees. And they're always at odds. And so the mood is, if they're not actually antagonists, but to further the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes, they are playing the role of competitors. That's why we say there's no lila without jatila. There has to be some kind of conflict or opposition to further the sweetness of any kind of lila or pastime. And so Lakshmi comes and all her Brahmin priests start beating up the Daitapatis, who are like forest people. They don't have Brahmin threads. They don't follow rules and regulations like the Brahmins do. And they fight them. And then they try to take Jagannath back by force. And he finally says, no, I'm not coming. Give me at least 4 or 5 more days. So the whole story goes on. We'll hear more about it tomorrow. But what we're trying to do is develop this mood. It's a high aspiration, but the way we can do it is just bit by bit, cultivating that understanding of and respect for that kind of exalted mood of the Brijabasis, that exalted mood of bhakti. That you can do yoga and meditation for thousands of years and still not attain that mood, but you can attain it in a few moments by association of a Brajabasi sadhu. You can do your own austerities for tens of thousands of years. Anarpita chirim chirat. For a very long time, this mood was not given. But Mahaprabhu came to give this mood. And how do you achieve it? That anuragi jananugami. Try to find those sadhus, those Vaishnavas, those great saintly devotees who have this mood and take shelter of them. And by staying in their association, gradually it can rub off. It's described like ghee. You may have dysentery. The only medicine is ghee. You say, how can I eat ghee? I have dysentery. But if you take the ghee, something will gradually stick. So by association, lava matra sadhu sangha, a fraction of a moment with sadhus is described to be able to give you liberation. But we don't want liberation. We want something better. That's why you have to stay in association and gradually begins to rub off. And you gradually develop the mood that they have by sharanagati, by dedication. And then this becomes our own property. And at that point, we cannot imagine the sweetness there. Because you can imagine having that direct relationship where their experience becomes yours. When you have that mood of saranagati, surrender to them, when you're so connected to their service, whatever they experience, you experience it also. That's the trade-off. That bliss and ecstasy that they're experiencing, you get to taste that and relish it yourself, as well as having your own personal individual experience of it. It's not like you erase yourself. You're relishing their experience of relationship with Krishna, as well as your own individual experience, enhancing it. So that's why it said that the followers of Radharani, they experience bliss even greater than Krishna can taste. That's why it said that sugar cannot taste itself. So God is the sweetest of the sweet. But to taste his own sweetness, he comes as his devotee. So as the devotee, we can taste that sweetness of Krishna. And so by taking shelter of Srimati Radhika, she tastes the highest limit of his sweetness. That's why he came to taste her sweetness. Sri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kidriso. Her sukh, her happiness with relationship to him. Krishna himself came to taste that as Mahaprabhu. And so by being the devotee, we taste the sweetness of Krishna. He is the most sweet, the reservoir of pleasure, the reservoir of bliss, all sweetness. Maduram, Maduram, Maduram. He is the most sweet. But how do we taste that sweetness? By taking shelter of his devotees. And if we want to taste the highest zenith of that sweetness of Krishna, we take shelter of Srimati Radhika because she experiences him completely and full, to the highest extent. Therefore, we're following this, Radharani's Ratha Yatra. Gorpavanandi Hari Hari Bo. Vancha Kalpatrivya Kivasana. Vitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thakur Prabhu. Kuch bol bo. Kirtan.
Anything